So welcome to this week's Optimal Health Clinic Facebook Live. And this week I wanted to talk about one of the mental patterns that we do a lot of work with. By the way, you mentioned that I had a cold, so if my voice sounds rather more nasally and gravelly than usual, my apologies. So, mental tennis. Mental tennis is one of the most common patterns that we see in people that we work with. And when I talk about patterns, these are different thought processes or kind of rhythms or grooves that people can get caught in that then trigger all kinds of responses and other processes that come from them. So, one of the more common ones we talk about is what we call Windows ME. And Windows ME being like an operating system for the brain through which everything then gets processed. And that's where we're constantly checking what's wrong with me, why is it wrong with me, should I rest, should I not rest? And there's a whole kind of process that in fact, probably Windows ME would be worth its own video, so maybe we'll do a video on that at some point. But specifically, mental tennis is one of the very common patterns that people have, where you find yourself going backwards and forwards on a decision or on thinking about something where you just keep going round and round. And that going round and round often has a number of consequences. It has consequences in terms of revving up our nervous system and triggering maladaptive stress response. It can have consequences in terms of just feeling unpleasant, like we feel kind of like analysis paralysis, like we can't really progress or move forward to the thing that we're trying to do because we're going round and round and round in our thought process around it. And it just feels crap, basically. Crap being a very technical term. So let me give you some examples of what I mean by mental tennis. So it's almost, perhaps it's like you are trying to decide, maybe you've got a plan to that a friend's coming to visit, or you're going out to the cinema, and that's a stretch in terms of where you are at this point in your recovery process. And you're having a not particularly good day. Perhaps the day or a few days before you did something which was a bit more than you normally do. Symptoms are a bit more triggered. And the question is, do I go? And you find yourself going backwards and forwards of, should I stay at home and rest? If I stay at home and rest, maybe I'll feel a bit better. If I want like it tomorrow, I don't want to overdo it. And then the other side of mental tennis comes in, which is, well, maybe I'll feel better for doing this activity. I don't want to let this person down. And sometimes if I just get out of the house, environmental tiredness, I change what I'm doing, I'll feel better. And it's like a game of tennis. It's like we're going backwards and forwards again and again and again. And the definition of mental tennis is no side really quite wins. So, where we tend not to have so much mental tennis, it might be an example where, let's say we're in stage 1 crash and it's just absolutely clear there's no way we can do that thing. There might be other thought processes that go on around it. There might be Windows ME or anxiety or snowball thinking and those kind of things. But the principle of should I go or should I not go is really clear. We just know we can't go. Or at stage 3 of recovery, it may also be really clear that we can go because the consequence of going outside of where we normally go is not that significant. But by definition of mental tennis, it's that each side is kind of equally balanced. And there are different arguments and different reasons on both sides. And then we find ourselves going round and round and round with this issue. It's funny, a few people are saying they're going through this at this time. I think it's definitely a common thing. And it's something that can go on with ME chronic fatigue recovery, but it can go on in just life generally. Often decisions in life, if it's a decision around a relationship, should I get into this relationship, should I get out of this relationship? Do I want to do this career? Whatever it may be, when we have decisions to make, when we're weighing decisions via arguments and two sides seem fairly equally weighted in that moment, we find ourselves going backwards and forwards. So, as I said, in terms of ME chronic fatigue recovery, it has consequences in terms of triggering a maladaptive stress response. It can feel crap. It's also not a very effective way to make decisions Because when we're going backwards and forwards in these kinds of ways, what you often find is we're not actually progressing in our clarity or understanding. What we're doing is we're getting more entrenched in arguing those two positions. It's like, if you've ever had the experience with arguing with someone that holds a different worldview around something, politics on Facebook is a really good example of this. You have people, especially around election time, you have people arguing over something. And if people go in with a particular position, you almost never see a scenario, on Facebook particularly, you almost never see a scenario. Someone goes with a position, and after a kind of backwards and forwards, they go, do you know what? I think you're right. Crumbs, I never thought about it like that. You're absolutely right. How foolish of me to think about it this way. I'm so sorry, you're absolutely right. That's not what you see on Facebook, right? You see it gradually escalate more and more and more and more to the point that it feels like if these two people were in a bar together, they'd probably be throwing punches at each other by this point. So this kind of understanding, just finally kind of what this is, it's our brain trying to decide what to do and getting stuck between two relatively evenly weighted positions of what we should do. Sometimes the weighting of those positions is not rational, I should say. Sometimes the weighting of those positions is because we have an emotional attachment on one side and a rational attachment on the other side. So it may be, for example, I take the example of whether we should go to the cinema. In that example, it may be, and it could be either side that it's weighted, but let's say, for example, in this instance, that the rational truth is that you should stay home and rest. The emotional pull is you want to go, and you don't want to let down this person you've said yes to. So you're weighing your emotional desire versus rational fact. But they feel relatively equally weighted, which is why you've got this mental tennis going backwards and forwards. So sometimes in that instance, it's much easier to define what to do, because in that instance, if we can step back and see, I'm weighing my emotional want as highly as the rational fact of the situation, and in that instance, I would argue that the rational fact of the situation should trump I don't mean Donald Trump, I mean Trump as in Trump, the emotional side of what's happening. Sometimes we're weighing emotion against emotion, and other times we're weighing rationality against rationality. If what we're weighing is rationality against rationality or emotion against emotion, you could argue in many cases, and this is not true in all cases, but you could argue in many cases, by definition of fact that we're fairly equally matched. It may not matter that much which one you choose. But if you choose to, let's say it's equally weighted and they're both rational, you just can't work out which one you should do. If you go to the cinema and you spend the whole time at the cinema thinking, I should be home resting, I shouldn't be doing this, I'm overdoing it, I never listen to my body, why can't I break through, why can't I stop pushing myself, then you're still playing the mental tennis whilst you're there, and you're going to have not such a good outcome. Or if you stay at home and you spend the whole time at home thinking, I wish I'd gone to the cinema, why did I let this person down, why do things never change, I should have gone, I'd have felt much better if I went. You start to see that whichever side of the equation, whichever side wins, you still lose, because we're still caught in the pattern of mental tennis. And mental tennis played in this way has its intention is we're trying to figure out what to do. The consequence is often whichever side we go down, we still lose because of the fact we're still hanging on to that pattern. So what we want to be doing is to stop mental tennis, and then without the kind of the speeding up mind and nervous system and going backwards and forwards and trying to figure out what to do, from a much more grounded, and we get there through the stop process or EFT or meditation, whatever it may be, but getting to a more settled and more grounded place. And if the mental tennis restarts, we stop mental tennis and we kind of settle and we ground ourselves again. Not weighing it through lots of facts and information in our mind, but learning more to tune in to actually our deeper instinct, our deeper feeling about what's actually appropriate. And sometimes there are layers to this understanding. So sometimes what we see is on the surface, we're getting caught in our helper patterns about what everyone else wants and thinks we should be doing. Or we're getting pulled by an achiever pattern. If we can see that one side of the mental tennis is actually unhelpful patterns that are happening, then we can see that side's not helpful. So then we can weigh with the other side, for example. Or if we can see that what we're doing is we are caught in this pattern because we're just in a state of anxiety, if we settle the anxiety, often it then becomes clear what we should be doing. That things that feel incredibly muddled when our brain is very overstimulated and overactive and going round and round and round, often those things seem much simpler and much clearer when we settle and we rebalance what's happening in our nervous system. And so when mental tennis is happening, this is, I guess this is the crux of this video. When mental tennis is happening, the goal is not to try and get one side to win the game of mental tennis. Because if one side wins, if it's in the way I described a minute or two earlier, we lose anyway. So when we're stuck in a game of mental tennis, we need to stop the mental tennis. The way we stop the mental tennis is by calming our mind, coming out of the thought process, kind of interrupting the pattern, sometimes just going and doing something completely different that changes our thinking process. Listen to a piece of stupid music, watch a 2-minute comedy video on YouTube, but something that breaks and interrupts that pattern, that allows us to, with a clearer mind, not reweigh the arguments like that, but see if we can get to a deeper level of understanding of what's going on. What's fueling the different sides of that mental tennis? What's that side really about? Not getting caught in that I don't want to let this person down, but actually that's my helper pattern, which is making other people's needs more important than my own needs. This is my Windows ME fear anxiety pattern, which is making anxiety about symptoms more important than what's actually going on. And if you can get away from all the surface stuff and you can get to a deeper level of understanding, you can weigh the mental tennis differently. And as Claire's just posted, and that's also very true, your gut feeling is very helpful. And often you can't get to your gut feeling when it's all happening in your head. Just a comment on that. You can, without getting too hysterical here, you can make decisions from your head, your heart, or your gut. Your head is your kind of rational thinking, your heart is your more emotional thinking, and your gut is your more instinctive thinking. And you'll read things in, I think it was Fritz Perls that once said, lose your mind and come to your senses. Well, I've seen people and worked with people who don't have any rationality, they just follow their heart the whole time, and often they make reckless and foolish decisions in life. So I think rationality and logic is very valuable. I just think rationality and logic on its own will send you round in endless circles. So you need a balance. You need to use your mind, you need to use your heart, you need to use your instincts. And when we're caught in mental tennis, it's normally because we're just using our mind and we're just going round and round in those patterns. So going back to the crux of it again, the solution to mental tennis is not for one side to try and win the argument. The solution to mental tennis is to stop the game of mental tennis and come to the decision in a calmer, more grounded, different way. Just one other piece that sometimes that can help with that is getting outside reflection, what we call reality checking it with someone else. So someone that they've got a sensible understanding of your situation, which sometimes is a bit more rare than it should be, but if someone's got a sensible understanding, to be able to say, this is what's going through my head, I've got these two sides, I'm trying to get clarity, what do you think? And often, even if we don't agree with the outside perspective, by hearing the outside perspective, if we disagree with it, that tells us something about how we feel. So, and if we do agree with it, that's great. So often we don't ask for advice because we're worried that we won't agree with it. If we don't agree with advice, I think that tells us something. Often in itself, it's very helpful. And yeah, as Taylor is saying, when you're anxious, rational thinking goes. Exactly. So what we need to do is to calm down the anxiety, to reinstall some more rational thinking to be helpful and to be useful. So I hope that's been useful. In the spirit of trying to keep these videos short and me not rambling on forever, I think we'll finish that there. If that has been useful, please let me know. Feel free to share comments and thoughts in the comments underneath. And if that has been useful, then maybe we'll do some more videos on some of the different mental patterns that happen. I'm aware we've got some more subtypes to do. What I'm trying not to do is just do like subtypes for a month and then something, so I'm trying to vary it a little bit. We will come back and look at some more subtypes. We will at some point do the mirror video of last week of why psychology people should come to nutrition. And if this video has been helpful, we'll also look at some more videos around different mental patterns. We can look at Windows ME, we can look at snowball thinking. There's several other ones that I think could be useful to look at. So thank you for joining me. I hope that's been useful, and I will talk with you next week. Bye-bye for now.